Let's read Ephesians 6, 5 through 9, and this is the Lord's word here. It says, "Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from what? The heart, from the heart. With good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men. Knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. And ye masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, and neither is there respect of persons with him." Now you can be seated. My apologies. I know sometimes I do things different, but I'm going to be honest with you. I don't. Maybe it's just me. Sometimes when I get into the Word, I get lost, I get confused, and so sometimes even before I read, it's a good thing for me to pray before I start getting into the Word. If I'm being honest, I would have loved last week's message, and Caleb did a fantastic job as we were talking about parents and submission and all those kind of things. I'm a parent of three girls, and so I feel like that would be natural. But here's what would happen with that is I would have a lot of opinions on what needs to happen. Being formerly over children's department, I would have a lot of opinions. So I think that was very intentional for the Lord to place me here tonight, because tonight, if I'm being honest, it was a struggle to try to figure out. And again, the struggle wasn't so much the word. The struggle was, man, I've realized I failed at a lot of things. And so I hope tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and preface this, I am not coming at you. I am not preaching at you. I am trying to give you some good advice, because I was able to see some areas that I failed in as a leader, as a servant, in times that I thought I was a servant, but I wasn't. And so I invite you to come on in and let's have fun with the word tonight, okay? So just a little backstory. I want us to help, because this is Bible study. We get this extra time. I want to make sure that we're really getting into the context and the frame of where we are at tonight. So obviously we're in the book of Ephesians still, and the thing that I need you to know is this is Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus. And usually when Paul wrote a letter, it was either to address problems, or it was to encourage them with things that they were doing well. And so I just want us to have a context of what's happening. So we open the scripture up with, "Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters." When we take this word servants, if we look into the Greek word for this is doulos. And this word doulos also means slaves. So this is what I want you to understand tonight. What Paul is specifically addressing is slaves and masters in this culture and in this time period. He is addressing slaves and masters. Now, thank goodness we live in a place in America here where we don't have to deal with this idea specifically of a slave and of a master, right? But I'm going to get into how all this relates to us. But I want you to understand the culture and the context of what Paul is talking about, so we can really understand why this matters to us. So when we go into this idea, when we look at this area, they are being controlled by the Roman Empire, and slaves are prevalent. And slaves in that time, just like we know through slave trade, there was no legal rights. They were used as like commercial commodities, so they were used. And actually a lot of the backbone of the Roman Empire was built upon slaves. And part of this is the Roman people kind of felt it was underneath them to work. It was they weren't willing to work and to try hard. It was beneath their dignity. They weren't willing to work. So basically the entire empire was built on slave power. It was actually said, I was researching this, and it was actually said that there was a possibility that there were more slaves in that time than there were free people. It was also estimated that they had somewhere around 60 million slaves during this time in the Roman Empire. So just think about that. And when we're talking about slaves, we're talking about people that were sold, traded, used, and discarded. And so Paul's coming in and addressing this. Actually, one Roman writer wrote that he divided instruments into 3 categories. He said, I have 3 instruments. One is the articulate, which was a slave. The inarticulate, which were animals, and the mute, which were tools and vehicles. So I basically wrote that to say the main difference between an animal and a slave during this period of time was that a slave could talk. And that's how they viewed these individuals, these slaves. Old slaves, those that were aged, we found out that they were thrown into dumps. They were basically discarded. Sick slaves were not fed because it wasn't worth the money. They would take them and then they would throw them away because it was basically like having an insufficient tool. Augustus was said to have crucified a slave because he killed his pet quail. There was a guy named Polio that threw a slave into a pond of eels for breaking a crystal goblet. So what we understand is that slaves really had no value at all, right? And not only this, I want to get a little bit deeper just so we can get into what we're talking about. When we look at the Old and New Testament, we can actually see that in the Bible specifically, the slave system was never actually condemned. There was actually a lot of reasons somebody would enter into being a slave. And one of those would be if they had to make restitution for a problem. For instance, if a thief had stolen something, instead of going to prison, they could voluntarily become a slave and basically serve out their time so they wouldn't be arrested. Another opportunity for this would be like an indentured slave. And what that meant is people who wanted to enter into a certain land, they would basically make themselves available as a slave. Or even somebody who maybe had purchased something or wanted to purchase something, but they went broke and they couldn't. And instead of them being killed or imprisoned, they would be able to be a slave to work off this debt. But the Bible is not, and we can read, and I'm going to give you some examples. The Bible is not okay with the mistreatment of people. And what it was set up to be is this idea of servanthood and this idea of helping in a sense. So obviously the slaves that we have here in this Roman culture and even the slave trade and everything that we saw in America is completely despicable and horrible because there was a mistreatment of people. But as we read and we can look through like the Levitical laws and God actually allowed rules so that people could be completely freed of all their debt after a certain number of years. And the other thing about this as well is that there was this great amount of opportunity for them to basically live in society as contributors. And that's what God wanted. So again, I want to understand, and I want y'all to know this, I'm not speaking for slavery. I'm trying to speak into the context of everything happening and why Paul is addressing this. I mean, again, the Bible is very clear in how we are to treat people, right? In Exodus 21:16, it talked about it is forbidden to kidnap somebody and sell them. So obviously that's speaking against having slaves in that. Exodus 21, people were not allowed to abuse slaves. Also, if fugitive slaves, they were trying to escape from their masters because they were being mistreated, it was forbidden to send them back. And so what we begin to see through all of this, and this is at the prime time of Christians becoming a real thing. That's when the Apostle Paul is going out and sharing his story and winning people to Christ and other people doing it. And what we have is we have all these slaves that are starting to become Christians. And that's where we're kind of getting into this. And this is why Paul is addressing this situation, because you had good Christian people that were stepping in and saying, hey, what you are doing and the way that you are treating these people is horrific, and this is evil, and this is bad, and you shouldn't be doing this. And then so slaves were coming because, of course, I like what I'm hearing. I like this idea of Christianity. I like what Jesus stood for and how he said we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so you had all these slaves that were coming to Christ. But then it created an issue. And that's where kind of the confusion is, and that's where we're going to pick up today, is because you had slaves that became Christians being told things like, hey, you are a royal priesthood. You are a child of God. You have an inheritance from the King of Kings, right? You are somebody, you have value. So then you had these slaves that were sitting here and saying, okay, wait, if I can identify with God and I am a child of God, how am I also a slave? So you were having all these issues, you were having this confusion, and so that's where we're picking up today, is Paul having to address what it means to be a servant. So why does this matter to us today? I gave you the history, the backstory of where we're at, why Paul is having to address this issue between servants, masters, slaves, and masters, because here's what it is for us today. Here's our context on how this matters. Every one of you in here serves something or someone. Right? And I don't mean spiritually, because hopefully everybody in here serves the one true God. That you serve Jesus Christ. You have given your life to Christ. But there is somebody in this world that you serve, whether that's a boss, whether that's an authority, an officer, people out in the public. Maybe you are just a servant in this community. There is somebody that you serve. And so what Paul is trying to address here is he's trying to help us to understand where our thoughts could be, or where our thoughts should be. And what I want to do real quick before I get into point one, I put 2 reminder verses at the top of your notes. And the first one I want to tell you about is Ephesians 5:21. And this one was just addressed in the chapter before. And it said this: submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. And the reason that I put this verse is this is kind of why all this is being created. We are supposed to submit ourselves to one another. So what does this do? Is a master supposed to submit to a servant? Is a servant supposed to still submit to a master? How does that go? So this is where kind of all of the context came from of why we are to serve who we are serving. And this is the other thing I want you to understand. As a Christian, you are an image bearer of Christ. So you need to understand that you have a witness and you have a testimony, and it's so crucial in this world that you understand your place and where God is calling you to do. And here's the other thing before we get into the points. People will be more inclined to someone who does a great job and is a great servant, who doesn't complain, who doesn't cause problems. And that's what we're going to address today, is how we are supposed to lead in this world, how we are supposed to serve in this world with integrity. So if you're taking notes, let's jump in together in point number 1. And what we see first is the servant's submission. The servant's submission. And so the verse reads, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters, according to the flesh. So that word servant, slaves, I told you it was the Greek word doulos, which is basically subjection and usually bondage of some sort. Bondage of some sort. And so what I want you to note here is this word be obedient is in the present tense, which is very important. And so that's what gives us point A, is there's an active obedience. There's an active obedience. It should be daily, minute by minute. You are being obedient to the things that you are supposed to be obedient to. Right? You're supposed to be obedient. We are to obey everything and all at all times. And this is what I mean. Colossians 3:22 says it like this: servants, obey in, what does it say? All things. So servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. So in all things. 1 Peter 2:18 says, servants, be subject to your masters with all fear. And we're going to unpack that fear. Not only to the good and gentle, check this out, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. For this is thankworthy if a man of conscience toward God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. So what this is saying is actively and at all times serve regardless of how you're being treated. Okay? Because it says, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. So those that are mistreating you, those that don't show you the respect you feel you deserve. It says, at all times, active obedience. Now, this is what I'd say. Obviously, and I think this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Obviously, if somebody is telling you to do something that's immoral, against the Bible, you're not to do that. Right? We're not going against God here. But if you have a boss that you don't like, and you're not wanting to serve him because you don't like him, that is not an exclusion in this verse. If you don't agree with the policies of your job, that doesn't mean you get to just check out. if you had an input on a position, on something, a deal or something like that, and they didn't go with your opinion, that doesn't mean you get to say, I'm out on this. It says, be obedient. Colossians said, in all things. In all things. And how is it supposed to be? How is it supposed to be? According to the flesh, with what? Fear and trembling. Fear and trembling. And we've unpacked this word before. Pastor Malcolm does a fantastic job with this. And this word fear does not mean you're supposed to be afraid when your boss walks in the door, right? You're not supposed to do things because you're scared that you're going to get in trouble. You're not supposed to just do things because you're afraid you're going to get written up, right? It's not afraid. The word fear is reverence, respect. And so that's point B, is a respectful attitude. A respectful attitude. So the people that we are actively serving, daily serving, we should be respectful to them. But what about if they disrespect us? You are to respect them. And I have a prime illustration of this. And before I give my illustration, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out here. I am not making a political stance here. It just happened as I began to study, and it was a prime example. So please understand, as I'm about to use this illustration, I'm not making a political stance. I'm making a fact on how we are as people. About a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, we had President Trump delivered his joint speech to Congress. And a lot of you already kind of know where I'm going with this. But when President Trump, which we can all agree is a person of authority, regardless of if you respect him as a person or what he said, I'm not talking about policies, I'm not talking about what he stands for, I'm talking about the position he holds. As Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States, he has authority that's been given to him. And as he walked into this room, there were a group of people that stood up, applauding, and it was excited he was here. There was a group of people who didn't move and sat there. And again, I'm not speaking against one or the other. I'm speaking specifically on respect, right? And President Trump walks in here, a group stands out of reverence, right? Out of respect. And another group chooses, because of whatever reason, to sit there. And this is how this should be. We should stand regardless. Because if we really want to get into it and we really want to talk about presidents, we understand who put him in position. God, right? God puts the authorities into position. And so this is what I would also say on the flip side. If Donald Trump walked in here right now, I would stop what I'm doing for a minute. I mean, it would be kind of weird, and why would you walk in a service? And we just have to dissect that a little bit. But if he walked in, I would show reverence because of the position he holds. But this is also what I would say. If former President Joe Biden walked in the door, I would also stand because of the authority he holds. Now, some of you just got a little tense there because you're like, well, do you know what he did? Again, I'm not standing because of his policies. It's for the authority that he holds that we also understand he had been placed into power by our ruler, God. Does that make sense? So again, I'm not speaking on political affiliations. I'm speaking on this idea of reverence and respect. And that's what we are to have with the people that we serve. Again, this isn't just a serve your boss. It's whatever capacity someone has authority over you. You are to serve them, be obedient to them with a value of respect. With a value of respect. But it goes a little bit deeper with that. In singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. As unto Christ. So that's point C. We need to have a rightful aim. And this is where it's going to get a little bit harder for us. But I think it's really going to put things into understanding to help us to do. And when it says singleness of heart, here's your checkup. You need to do a checkup of your heart real quick. You need to do a checkup of your heart. Singleness of heart, also called single-heartedness. It's the idea of having sole devotion to a task or endeavor. One way I put it here is your heart has to be unified. Your heart has to be unified. To be one, you cannot be torn into different direction. And the thing with this is it's not based upon the other person. You see, I'm going to use that illustration again with the president. When I said, for some of you, when I said former President Joe Biden, I would also stand, it got a little tight. Because in one breath you're saying, oh, well, yeah, I guess he is president. But on the other hand, you're saying, oh, but do you know? Do you know what he did? Do you know what he stands for? Understand what I'm saying? So in that moment, we had a conflict. We were torn. We were stretched. It felt a little different for us. And so, again, remember, I'm not saying be obedient to the things that are immoral, unethical. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying there has to be this sense of respect, and there has to be this obedience because you're following what the Lord says. And you have to be unified in your heart because you cannot fully be submissive, obedient, and respect this person if you're being torn on things. And usually where this tearing comes from is because, let's take the workplace again, and where you work is because sometimes boss man or boss lady does something, one person doesn't like it, and so then we have people talking about why we don't like what that person did. So we're trying to be a respectful employee, but then we hear how they're mistreating this person, and then we jump on board with that, and so now we're being torn. And so what I want you to understand is what Christ is calling us to is to understand, Christ is saying, I'm not interested in how they're treating you. I'm interested in the servant that you are being. Christ says, I can deal with that. Let me deal with that. But what I want you to do, as someone who believes and has put your trust in me and someone who says you are following me fully, I need you to be submissive. I need you to be obedient. I need you to do what I'm asking of you. And we can't be torn. Okay? So here's this idea again. There's no way for you to be fully submissive as an individual if you are torn. So, okay, Josh, I hear it. It sounds good. I need to respect this person. I need to actively obey. I need to not be torn regardless. But how in the world are we supposed to do that? How are we supposed to do that? Well, we need to understand that it is possible to all be under singleness of heart. Acts 2:46, this is one of the coolest things. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. You had a group of people here that all had a common purpose. Their common purpose is we are about to turn this world upside down for Jesus Christ. They were all in this room. They were all coming because they had one purpose, one plan, one goal, and that was we are going to serve Christ with everything that we have. And so in this, if we continue to read, there's people that's selling their possession. There's people selling their land. There's people just giving this money to these disciples, the apostles, to just go and do God-sized things. And what it was is they all came together and said, we are going to do this because we love Jesus Christ and we're willing to do anything that's possible. So I'm going to let you know tonight, the way that you can get into your workplace, that you can serve your master, whoever that may be, your boss, the person that you are serving, whether it's an individual, a boss, or whatever, is you got to love the Lord and understand that what you are doing is for the Lord. Is for the Lord. Again, as unto Christ. So how do we do that? We're going to get to our next point here. Point number 2, the servant's sincerity. The servant's sincerity. That's what we're going to see next. And this is exactly what Paul was helping the slaves there in this time to understand. Is that, yes, it's a little different right now. Yes, I understand that you are a new creation. You are under Christ, but you are still under these conditions here. So the servant's sincerity. So what is sincere? Sincere means it's free from pretense or deceit, and it proceeds from genuine feelings. Okay? Free from pretense or deceit, proceeding from genuine feelings. So basically, the way we do this and the way that we serve, we have to have a sincere heart. This should be an exact representation of who we are, and it should not be something that we are turning on, we are turning off as we see fit. Where I really see this is people who don't like their job. You don't like your job, so what do? You show up, sometimes you perform well, sometimes you don't perform well. It's all depending on kind of maybe how the wind is blowing. You show up, I'm just kind of tired today. I'm going to halfway do what I want to do. I've got these jobs, but I think I can just do this, this, and this. I'll be fine. I'll be able to get out of here. That's usually where I see it. But what I'm hoping you to start to understand at this point moving forward is you are to be a servant wherever you are. Okay, and that's where we're going to really dive in a little bit more on this idea of what a servant is. And I'm not just speaking as you're an employee and the employer. You are to be a servant wherever you're going, regardless of the location. And the way that you should start to see your life is that no matter where you are, God has you in that specific place for a specific purpose. And if we can live our lives like that, it changes everything. Because if you can sincerely think that as you were driving here and you stopped by the Burger King on your way and you got your meal, or maybe that's just your deal, if you could stop for a minute while you're in that drive-thru about to get your food to say, I wonder if the Lord put me here to talk to this lady and ask her if I can pray with her. Or as you're stopping at the gas pump and you have to get out of your car anyway, and it's that awkward, the gas pump right beside you, and you really don't want to make eye contact, and you're just putting your gas in, it's like, I feel like I got to talk, but I'm just going to go get my car and go sit. What if we in that moment said, you know what, I wonder if this person right beside me needs encouragement. So if we started to live our lives daily and it wasn't an on and off switch, and no matter where we were, we took it with a sincere heart to say, I feel like God really wants me right here for a specific purpose. How would that change our lives? Now, I told you I was not just going to preach at you. So I'm gonna get a little vulnerable. Can I do that? Can I just share where I was broken a little bit in this? I've been torn before. I have been exhausted after a very long week, and a very tiring week leads to another tiring week that leads to another tiring week. When I was over the children, over Kids Quest, one of the jobs that I was supposed to have is getting into the schools and doing Kids for Christ. And I loved it. However, when you wake up in the morning and you have to get your kids ready and you have to make sure they're making it to school, but you also have to get out of the door quick enough so you can make it to the school by 7:20, 7:30, after working till about 9:30 the night before and having to do this every single day of the week, if I'm being honest and I'm being vulnerable, there were times that I was just like, and I feel horrible to even express this to you, especially for those of you who entrusted your kids with me during this time. And it's like, here I was thinking he just could do it. No, there was times I just wanted to turn the switch off. I just wanted to relax for a minute. I just wanted, honestly, on a Thursday morning after I just did Wednesday night kids, and some of you were late to pick up your kids, and I was here till 8:45. Some of you lost track of time, and your kid was here till 8:50, and you apologized like 37 times to me. It was like on those Thursday mornings when I'm driving 25 minutes, so that means I'm leaving my house before 7 just to arrive. And again, I'm just being vulnerable. I remember just getting there like, and I just want to turn off the switch, but I'm going to share something with you. And this is where God really convicted me. And what I'm thankful for is God reminds you of the good stuff to help you to keep going. Because what happened at this Kids for Christ, and I specifically mentioned the Thursday, and it was at Harmony School. So it seems like it takes me 3 hours to get there. It's not really. I dramatize stuff sometimes. But I get there to the school and I'm walking, and I really do feel like I walk down the hallways like, how y'all doing? How y'all doing? And I don't know if you know this about kids, but they need a lot of attention. Some of you who laughed know. And it's just like, John! And it's, hey, buddy. And it's just, they need so much from you, and they want so much, and you got to give them. And I remember just giving this message. And to me, it was nothing profound, but it was just helping the kids to understand that they did matter and that they had value. And I'll never forget, this little girl comes up to me and she says, Josh, my parents don't believe in God, but I do. Woo! You're talking about a moment that I felt really little because I told you what was in my mind as I was on the way there. I wanted it. It could have been just so easy, and I thought about it just to say, hey, I'm running a little late. I'm behind, because I was, and making excuses, but I did it. And the Lord just gave me this biggest blessing ever. And I can't tell you how many other schools I go to that it's the same thing. Josh, I don't get to go to church, but I love the Lord. Or kids that'll come up and write me notes where they got in their Bible and they're handing it to me. And so what's my point in all this is I had to change my perspective of what I was doing. It wasn't a job, because I'm going to let you know now, my job right now as chief of staff is not to be in the schools. But guess where I still am throughout the week? Still in the schools, because I want to be a servant and I want to serve kids. I want to serve people. And I know that wherever I'm at, the Lord has me there for in that specific place for a specific purpose. And if we change the way we think about things, how our life could be different. Which also, in the same breath, I wonder how many opportunities I have missed because I turned the switch off because I was tired. Because I didn't really think about the full perspective of everything that was happening. So here's the thing, don't turn the switch on and off. And here's the other thing, because what we really have to avoid is we have to reject hypocrisy. And this is what I mean by this. We have to reject hypocrisy. Because what the verse says is not with eye service as men pleasers. So don't just do the good stuff so people see you. Right? Don't just do it when people are looking. Don't do it just to get an attaboy. Don't do it for that. Are you passionate about serving the Lord? Or is that just a weird concept you don't know how? Well, pray and ask the Lord to say, Lord, show me. And I would also tell you that no matter where you're at, take an opportunity to say, this must be it. This is where I'm at. So let me serve the Lord. And don't let frustrations, discouragement, you don't like your boss, you don't like your coworkers, to stop you from doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. You have to have a sincere heart. You have to have a sincere heart. And here's just some verses that help me with this. Luke 6:45, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. Right? Jeremiah 17:10, I, the Lord, search the heart, I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. So God is checking our heart here. He's checking the motives of why we're doing it. Are we doing it just to be seen? Or are we doing it as men pleasers? And here's the real big thing I want you to understand. And this is the question, why does this matter? Why does everything that I'm talking about matter? And it's because of point B. You need to recognize your identity. You need to recognize your identity. And Paul gives it to us here, right here in verse 6. So not as eye service as men pleasers, but what? But as what? What does it say? But as the servants of Christ. That is your identity. Paul is telling you right now, you are a servant of Christ, whether you want to be or not. You are a servant of Christ. And so why does that matter? Because your testimony, your witness, the way that you walk day to day is a direct representation of who Jesus Christ is. And so what kind of servant are you being? Because you are an image bearer of Christ. So when people see you, are they actually seeing Christ? An illustration of this. I need everybody just to help me out. I want you to think. Use your imagination real quick. I want you to think of a business or a hotel, something that provides service. And I want you to think of a time that you experienced a bad business personally. A bad business, a bad customer service. And I want you to think about this, and I want you to think, what are some of the characteristics of that time? Probably somebody that was mean, rude, seemed like they didn't care, that you weren't important, almost as if you weren't even there, right? All right, let's flip it though. I want you to think about a good business. I want you to think about somebody that left a good impression, that you're like, I will do business there again. And even if their product's not that good or it's a little more expensive, you're probably still likely to use it over the other because of the service. Now, here's why this matters. If that business that had bad customer service and it was just poor, and I want you to think about this too, Fairview. That business that was poor, if they were sitting there and they were treating you rude, that you didn't matter, and all of a sudden they said, hey, by the way, you want to go to church with me? Or maybe they didn't even go that far with the invite. You just happen to hear them as they turn. They're talking to their friend about something that happened at their church service. And then, let's just hypothetically say they said the name of the church. Now, I'm not really a mind reader, but I've been doing this long enough that I know what would probably happen with the majority of you. Not only would you go, can you believe they treated me that way? And then start talking about church. And then XYZ church, I don't know what kind of people they have, but I won't ever go there because of. So I want you to think about this. And this is why it matters. Because we forget that when we're outside of these doors, people are watching. And if we are image bearers of Christ and we are supposed to be exact models and representations of Jesus Christ, and people hear us and they see us being rude and they see us acting a certain way, are we bringing them to Christ or are we pushing them away? And that's why this matters. It's a lot deeper than I just need to listen to my boss and do what he says. You are a servant of Christ. That is your identity. He lays it out here for us. You are to do a good job with what you are doing because you are a testimony and an exact representation of Jesus Christ. And here's the other things I will say on this. Some of you think you're crafty. Some of you think that you can hide it and pretend. I'm going to let you know people can see. Remember, it said you were supposed to be genuine. It's supposed to be sincere. So some of us try to act nice and act friendly. And the emphasis on the word act. People can see right through that. And what people hate more than a rude person is a rude person who's trying to act nice. And too many of us, that's what we're doing. We're just, you know. So check your heart. Is it sincere? Are you trying to serve people because you understand that you are a servant of Christ and you are doing this all for the Lord because that's what he's challenging you to do? All right. So point one was the servant's submission. Point two was the servant's sincerity. And the next thing is the servant's sacrifice. The servant's sacrifice. Oh, I forgot a point. I hate when I do that. C, and I think I already had it filled out, so I don't even think you had to fill anything in. C was responding from the heart. So that was the final part, doing the will of God from the heart. And I got one more illustration on this, and this is why this is also important. When we live out our life according to what God tells us to do, when we are, in a sense, providing that good service, when we are acting like we care for one another, when we are serving the Lord and we are being genuine, and people see that coming directly from the heart, it opens up so many opportunities. Because when people see that you care, they're more likely to come to you for help. So if you truly love the Lord and your desire is to help people, when you are actively living that out, people come and they want what you got. There was a lady at my gym, I was coaching her daughter, and she came up to me and she said, Josh, I need to talk to you about something. That's usually a red flag in what I do. That's usually, I have a problem and I'm going to tell you about it. And so I'm just like, okay. And so she comes, she's like, yeah, I just need to talk to you about something. And I was just gearing up for it. I'm like, okay, all right, just remember, go humble, just be an example. And she comes to me, she says, Josh, I just want you to know there's this big family issue we're having. I was like, okay. She's like, it's pretty bad. She's like, I'm asking if you would, can you pray for our family? I was like, oh, oh, yeah, most definitely. And it just threw me off because I thought we were going to have a problem. And she goes, but I need you to do something else. I'm like, okay, what's that? She goes, it's really affecting my daughter. And I don't know how she's going to make it through this. But Josh, I know how much you love us and you love our family and you pour into our kids. So can you talk to her? Do you think you can help her? And I'm going to let you know this opportunity would have never came if I was abrasive, if I was rough, and I didn't show that I cared. And so because I had my heart open and I served her family and her kids with a genuine sincerity, it opened up a door to be able to just share Christ with this girl. And I don't know, and in that moment, I did not know if she had a church. I did not know if she even believed, but guess what I was able to do? I was able to share with her about a loving father who would be there for her and guide her through this process, that wouldn't remove the pain, but would help her. And without a genuine and sincere heart, I would have never got that opportunity. The next thing we see is the servant's sacrifice. So here's what we need to see. It says, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men. So we should have a cheerful diligence. Let's read some verses and I'll share with what I mean. It says, Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. How amazing would that be? Because of the things that we do good, people would praise God for it. Like, man, I'm seeing so-and-so and what they're doing. Man, God is good, isn't he? Ecclesiastes 3:22, wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion, for who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? Ecclesiastes 3:13, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. Here's what I want you to know. You should have a cheerful diligence. You should be excited about the opportunity of what you get to do. You should be excited about being able to be in your workplace and serve the Lord. You should be excited that you get to go out daily and serve him, because honestly, joy comes from the good works that you produce. But this is what I want you to know. Well, let me not jump ahead. Let me jump ahead. Cheerful diligence. So be excited about what you want to do. And B, it should be a Christ-centered devotion. Christ-centered devotion. So remember, you are doing the will of God from the heart. So everything that you do should be doing the will of the Father. So be excited about what you get to do. Be excited about the opportunities that Christ gives you and see them as opportunities. And I think a lot of times that's just why we miss it, because we're just maybe grinding, we're just working, we're just outputting, we're just going. And we don't stop for a minute to just say, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. And I wanted to hurry to this part because this is my favorite part. Point number 4, the Savior's surety. The Savior's surety. Verse 8 reads like this, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. I'm going to say that first part again because it's so important. Knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth. So what we're going to see in this is we're going to see the principle of reward. Here's why this is the coolest thing. Or for some of you, it may be the worst part. But for me, it's a really good thing, because this is what I'm seeing here. I'm seeing that whatever I give, Christ is going to give back. Now, that's not really my motive, right? I'm doing it because I love the Lord and I want to serve him. But it's a good reminder that everything that I'm pouring and investing, I'm going to receive back. I'm going to receive back. But at the same time, those of us who don't do anything, it's going to be very awkward when we go and we don't receive anything from Jesus, because we ultimately haven't been doing anything good. And here's where I think some of us are going to miss this, because some of you think that you're doing a good thing, but your motives are all wrong, which makes it a bad thing. Some of you are serving so people see you and talk about you. Some of you may be serving, but you're also expecting something back in return. Some of you are giving because you expect them to give you back. Some of you are lending a hand because you know you have a project coming up. So my question to you is, are you trying to serve other people around you, or are they just a means to an end? Because if you're serving people with the wrong motives, it's not goodwill. And the verse is specific here. Knowing whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord. The same shall he receive. So it says in Luke, and this is what's really cool about this. Luke 6:38, y'all have heard this verse. Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men give unto your bosom. For with the same measure that you meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. This is what this means, and this is what's so cool about this. I'm just thinking about how God is a good gift giver. And I'm just thinking about the idea of I'm just serving and I'm just serving and I'm just serving. And it says that God's going to give it to me. Now, I know the illustration I'm about to use is horrible, so bear with me, but I think we'll understand. This verse, when it's talking about pressed down, shaken together, the first thing that I thought of is a trash can. Bear with me, I said. Because when we go to our trash can and it gets full, what do you typically do? Why? Why do you press it down? To get more in it, right? I press that bad boy down. Even though I shouldn't, because then it gets stuck in the trash can. That's why I said it's a horrible illustration. And some of you fathers are like, amen, I've been telling them. But that's what we do. We press it down. Why? To make more room. And then when we finally get the trash can out, or the trash bag out, what do? Why do you shake it? It settles. It creates what? More room. And then we can push all that other trash. And that's just what I'm picturing here. Is Jesus Christ just saying, oh, I'm going to give it to you. Let me just make more room. Let me put some more in here, shake it to where it's overflowing. And in the sense of the trash bag, it's exploded all on the floor, and now you need another trash bag, right? But the idea is it's overflowing. God is the perfect gift giver. And when you give, he's going to give it back. Ephesians 3:19, and to know the love of Christ which passeth knowledge, that ye might be filled with the fullness of God. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. This verse is for something else too, but I want you to think about this, is God gives abundantly, more than we could even think or imagine. Imagine your greatest thought, and it doesn't even come close to what Jesus can do for you. James 1:17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. This right here hit me hard. And this is why. Every good gift, every perfect gift comes from God. And I'm also going to be vulnerable for a minute, because when I've given gifts, there's been this period of time that I've been more or less messed over. I've given, and I'm not saying this in a braggadocious, I'm not trying to talk about me and inflate what I do, but there are so many times that I have given, and I experience joy, not because I'm giving, but because I see how the other person, how it helps them, and how I am being a servant, and it seems like it happens more times than not that person, they more or less stab me in the back. And I don't need to get into specifics, but I think you understand what I'm saying, that I've given, and then just to come back and it's, so how do you think that makes me feel? Betrayed? Angry? Bitter? Like, why do I want to keep giving? Every time I give, it just comes back, and it's worse. It would have been better if I wouldn't have given at all. And I'm going to be honest, that's the moment I start to feel like that, is I just feel betrayed, like, maybe it's just not worth it. But here's this reminder. Josh, this life is temporary. This life is temporary. Yeah, you may be hurt. But Josh, there's something so much greater on the other side. Yeah, okay. Like, you're hurt. But let me explain something to you, and that's just James' verse, because it reminded me as he is the Father of lights. When I'm feeling down and I'm feeling betrayed, that's not him. God didn't give me that gift. That's the devil working in someone else. And what God reminded me in this verse is that shadow that you're in, that dark place that you're in, remember, that gift isn't from me. Your gift is coming. So keep on being faithful. Keep on producing. Keep on serving, because there is something greater. And so this gives us this perspective of eternity. It gives us this perspective of eternity. Revelation 22:12, this is one of the last promises that Jesus gave, and this is what he says. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. Jesus Christ says, I'm coming back, and I am going to give back to you because you have been a servant. You have done exactly what I needed to do. You took your job and your identity serious. You were serving people. You were loving people. You were pouring into people. You were investing in people. And because you did that, son, I got you. I got you. And I am going to give it tenfold because I am a perfect gift giver. So let's have a perspective of eternity. Life here is so minute. And here's the final thing. Point number 5. Not only is there a servant's requirement, there's a supervisor's stewardship. So this isn't just for us employees and people that serve other people. It's also for us masters, bosses, people who oversee other people. People that oversee other people. And so we need to talk just very briefly about this. We're almost done. The first thing I want you to see in point A is there is a shared responsibility. There's a shared responsibility. It says, and you masters, do the same things unto them. Forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is the respect of persons with him. There's a shared responsibility. We are both to serve. It is not for the servant just to serve the master, but it is for the master to serve the people. Think about Jesus. The greatest example of servant leader we see. Jesus literally went down to his knees and washed his disciples' feet. He was a servant. He served them, and that's how they learned to what? Serve other people. And why could they serve him? Why did they respect him so much? It's because of the teachings he had and the way that he lived his life. You see, point B, there was a spirit of restraint. It says, forbearing, threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven. So see, there's a problem with some of us leaders, is we kind of get that superior mentality. We've maybe worked through the ranks, so to say. We've gone through it. We've been in the trenches, and now we're finally here. We put in our time, and we deserve for people to follow us. And so it creates this elitist mentality where we threaten, where we get rough and abrasive because you should know to do your job. I pay you for this job. But here's my challenge to you people who are leading other people. Is that the type of leader you would want to serve? And for some of you aspiring to be a leader wherever you're at, think about the leader you would love to serve, somebody who cared about you. Someone who came alongside of you and helped serve. Somebody who came along and mentored you and helped you to understand a little bit better what needs to happen. So there needs to be a spirit of restraint. Don't threaten, don't scold, serve. Romans 12:3, for I say through the grace given unto me to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. Just because you work through the ranks and just because you have authority doesn't mean a hill of beans to God. Because you and the person that serves you are on an equal playing field. Their value is given by God, not by you. Your value is not because of your position or the title that you hold. It's your value is that of Christ. And you are equals. And so just like we said that a servant should respect their leader, a leader should respect their servant. Because here's why. The final point. See, there's a supreme ruler we serve. Our master, which is in heaven. And neither is there respect of persons with him. He sees it as a level playing field. You're not proving anything. God is, and here's the thing I would say about this. Remember why you are in the position that you're in. Because ultimately it's not your skill. Your job may tell you that. But how did you get there? It's because God has placed you there for a purpose and a place. Here's the final thing I want to leave you with and my final illustration for the night. I think a lot of us are living a life where we think that a lot of things that we are doing are, and I've been in this, where we felt like our intentions were good, but really when we do a checkup, it's not. I've been in sales for a very long time. Before obviously serving in the church. And so there's been a lot of things that I've seen. And I remember one of the jobs, it was my very first sales job. I was selling copiers, computer software. I went to insurance after that. Now I do real estate. But before that, I remember being in this company, and it seemed like every week there was this new policy about sales, and this is how we're doing it, this is how we're doing it. And what was interesting is I was sitting there like new, trying to figure all this out. Like, why are there so many policies? Why is this coming out? And what I figured out is there was a lot of people that was getting around the system. And what I mean by that is there were salesmen that identified flaws in the policies, and they found ways to take advantage and earn more money. Now, I want you to put yourself as a salesman. If you found a loophole and you found an opportunity to, let's say, make an extra $10,000, would you do it? You ought to answer that out loud. It's a lot of money. And what a lot of people say is, well, look, it's not my fault I found a loophole. The company should have identified that quicker. So this is my gain, their loss. Hey, so sorry. And now a lot of us could sit here and maybe you have stories like that, but it's amazing how many, as I was studying, how many stories of like this that I saw. And what I see in this world is I see a very corrupt, evil world. And I see too many of us trying, myself included. Again, I'm not preaching at you. I want you to understand that. This spoke so hard to me in this, is that too many times we make a justification for what we're doing, and we need to realize that there's a greater thing here. There's a greater thing here. And we need to be very intentional with the way that we live our life, because it comes back at the top of your notes. It comes back to, where did I put my outline here? I just have all these papers. It comes back to the very top there. Ephesians 4:1. Therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation therewith you are called. Christ is calling us to higher standards. I want you to really do a heart checkup. This is your application. Do a heart checkup. Are you serving the Lord with everything you have? Or are you just living day to day? Are you making excuses for doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing? Are you being a true image bearer each and every single day? Are you missing opportunities because your level of serving is on Wednesday and Sunday here at the church? Do a checkup. And hopefully my encouragement is you're able to sit there and dwell on how you did this, how you did this, how you did this. And what God, and the reminder tonight is, what God says is, because you are my servant, because you are committed to me and walking worthy of the vocation I've called you, I got you. And I'm going to bless you beyond measure. Our world needs us. This world needs us. Our country needs us. The people in this community need us. Our children need to see us and how we live our lives. We don't need to make excuses, and we need to understand and help those around us to understand that we are called as servants of Jesus Christ to serve other people with love, because I want to remind you, when you serve people with love and care, it gives you opportunities to minister to other people, to be an image bearer of Christ.